Our guest today is a 14-year member of Sweet Adelines who currently lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. She learned about Barbershop when she was in her early teens and is the baritone of the ladies, our 2016 Rising Star champions, who also competed in Region 10 and then placed 9th at International in 2018 and 5th place in 2019. Kim is the director of the Capital City Chorus. She began there in 2018 and did get to take them onto the contest stage in 2019 and is looking forward to doing that again. She became a member of the international faculty last May, and she just completed work on the Director's Resource Toolkit Task Force, where they developed a bunch of resources for our directors to run virtual rehearsals. Kim is a music educator who currently has a private voice studio, and she also makes wonderful barbershop learning tracks. Today, she's going to share with us some tips and tricks and her favorite vocal exercises for keeping our vocal health going. Hi, Kim, and welcome to Zoom Chats 2021. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Renee?
I'm fine. You got lots of snow and cold in Indy, I'm assuming?
Yes, I haven't had to leave, so it hasn't really affected me. It just looks pretty outside.
I would love for you to tell everybody how you got involved in Barbershop, a little bit about your musical background. Just tell us the story of Kim.
Okay. Yeah, I actually got into Barbershop via just choral music. I sang in a choir called the Austin Girls Choir when I was younger. And I think it was like 12 or 13 when we were preparing to go on a trip in the summer to like England and France. And so our choir director hired a couple of section leaders to come in for a weekend at a retreat. And one of those nice young adults who had already been in that choir but had a lot of musical knowledge was Laura Pyle at the time. She is now Laura DeGraw. I ended up hanging out with Laura a little bit, and she showed me a recording of ambient singing Rhapsody in Blue, which is like the reason that I'm in Barbershop, because that, and I think it's the reason that I sing tenor the way that I sing tenor. And just listening to Shelley I can sing like any ambient song on tenor, but I listened to Rhapsody and then was like, cool, where do we do that? And so Laura took me to her mother's chorus. I joined like a couple weeks later. We ended up making a young woman in harmony quartet called Formata. And so that's how it all started.
So when did you become a member of Sweet Adelines?
I guess when I was 13 at some point. So I've been in I've been in Barbershop for like 14, 15 years now, which feels crazy. It's been more than half of my life, I guess. And that's very exciting. I can't imagine it with my life without Barbershop, for sure.
But what do you think drew you to it? Is it the sound? Is it the, I know what hooked me. I'm just curious what makes a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old go, I have to do that.
Yeah, I think that at the time I could not articulate it, but now that I've been in it for a while, I'm pretty sure it was just like overtones, the lock and ring of what Barbershop is. I've nobody else in my family really sings. My grandpa used to sing. He has since passed, but he was a singer and would go sing in bars and all sorts of places. And so I just remember I've loved music for a long time, for as long as I can remember. And I've loved singing because my grandpa loved singing and he was like my best friend. But I don't know, when I heard ambiance, I was like, that ring, there's something exciting about the sound. And then getting to go to a chorus and participate and be a part of that exciting sound and ring and overtones. I think that's what it was for me.
So I know you do a lot of jazz. And there's a certain thrill to every genre, but there certainly is something very visceral about ringing a barbershop chord. There's no way to describe it to someone that's never done it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I got the opportunity to study a lot of different genres of music in college, like early music. And I think that specifically my voice, something that I've been able to do really easily and maintain is that straight tone. that is desirable in early music, but also desirable in barbershop. I think that barbershop has really been a place for me to feel like what talents I have are especially useful in this particular genre. So I feel very safe and welcome, and like it's a great way to celebrate the things that I like about my voice. I actually sang tenor up until I participated in the ladies quartet.
Oh,
I sang tenor in that first quartet I was ever in, Formata, and I sang tenor in Windsor for a little while. I sang tenor in rich tones, and I love tenor. I like to think that I sound like Shelley Sweet because she's my idol, and that I think that's why I sing the way that I sing, is because I listened to her for so long. When the ladies were getting together, it initially started off as Quincy and I just talking about like, hey, this would be fun to do. It was Quincy's last year, and I had sung with Caroline before in a mixed quartet, and so the three of us got together and played with me singing tenor and Quincy singing baritone and vice versa. And I am just I'm a loud tenor. So it was easier for, I think it was a more balanced sound when I went to baritone, because Quincy was able to be the beautiful tenor that she is. And I got to really explore my chest voice, which I don't, you don't really get to do as a tenor very often. And it's something that I've always wanted to work on. So it's been really nice.
So you won Rising Star, and then you competed in Region 10 in 2018. And I know you had a Regional 10 record-breaking score of 646. So you had the right instincts about singing together. So that was a great beginning. And you placed 9th your first year, and then you were 5th in 2019 in New Orleans. So how was that? That must have been amazing.
It was so exciting. I think there's nothing like going out your first year and competing at international or at regional. Your first year at anything, because it's like, whatever happens, we did a great job.
Yeah.
It's just so freeing. And so that first year when we got into the top 10, I was like, this is amazing. This is it. We did it. We can just go out there and have fun. Man, talking about the ladies, I just miss them so much. We haven't met in over a year. The last time we saw each other was January of 2020.
I mean, do you have any plans for knowing when you'll be able to get together?
We put it in our plans to meet this May. So it's Quincy and I have booked our flights, and as soon as we can get the vaccine, we will if we can. And if not, we're hoping that as many of the people we care about will be vaccinated in time for that. And we're going to take lots of precautions, and 2 weeks before, all of the stuff.
You have voice students, and I'm sure you're Zooming with them, or are you meeting with them live right now?
I'm not meeting with anybody live. I'm Zooming with people for sure.
We would love to have some tips from you about maintaining vocal health right now, because we're all struggling.
I would love to talk to you guys about some fundamental things like alignment and breathing that maybe we don't get as much of a chance to reflect upon when we are in the moment and performing and doing all of that stuff. So I think now is a good time to brush that off, and then give you a couple of exercises that are my faves to get you back in tune. So the first thing I want to talk about, a very fundamental thing, is just alignment. Our body is our instrument, so it's important to think about setting yourself up for success. If you were to play any instrument and not have the correct posture, it wouldn't be very helpful, right? So I like to think of 4 main points, starting from down and working up, thinking about keeping the ankles, the hips, the shoulders, and your ears aligned. So I will stand up to give you a little bit better of that option. Can't see my legs, obviously. But to think about your feet they can be equal right next to each other, or if you feel better having one in front of the other, that's cool too. We just want to make sure that they're parallel and you're aware of where your ankles are. Moving up, make sure that your knees are nice and buoyant. You can't see them, but I promise they're buoyant. And that's not necessarily a point of alignment. It's just make sure that you aren't locking them, right? Your hips, you want your hips to be above your ankles. They're like a bowl-shaped bone. and you can either have it tilting too far forward or too far back. So typically, if you have them tilted too far forward, your butt kind of sticks out, and it's like if you're a little bit older and walking on a cane. But this puts your hips way far behind your ankles and takes you out of alignment. The opposite of that would be for your hips to be tilted too far back, and then it's just like you are forcing muscles to engage that you don't need to while you're singing. The whole point of that is either way, you don't want to engage these abdominal muscles to hold you up. And so that's why that's important. And then moving up is just thinking about your shoulders. Typically, if we're ready to perform, we're getting ready to sing and we're like, okay, I'm here. This forces your shoulders back. It makes you look very regal and proud and ready to take on the world, but it doesn't do much for your alignment. And the opposite of that is having them be too far forward. Like if you're nervous and you're protecting all of your very important organs, which was important when we had, lions and tigers and bears trying to get you, but we're sick, right? So we have ankles, we have hips, we have shoulders. And the last part is your ears. I'm going to come sit closer to you now because we're talking about the upper part. We want your ears to be above your shoulders, your hips, and your ankles, is to make sure that we're maximizing efficiency without creating tension. So your vocal cords are housed in your larynx. And if you take your hand and you put it on your neck and you swallow, you should feel something move up and down. That's your larynx. Your larynx is kind of like your kneecap. Have you ever put your leg out and just sort of moved your kneecap around? It's very fluid. It's not attached to anything, right? So your larynx can do that as well. I'm not encouraging you to do this, but you can if you want. It's just floating in a bunch of muscle. Yeah, it's just floating. And so the muscles that connect your face to your chest and your shoulders to the base of your head and all of that stuff, if your head is not aligned on top of your body, like think about balancing a bowling ball on top of a broomstick, you want it to be very centered. If you don't do that, you're forcing these muscles to engage. And since your larynx that houses your vocal cords are just floating in that muscle, we want it to be as relaxed as possible so that you don't introduce tension while you're singing. So that's why alignment is very important.
How do we keep that alignment in place, or at least keep checking in as we're singing a song while we're being told to show character, be loose, move? If you can help us, how do we recheck? So we're doing this great choreography plan, and how do we return to that stance and make sure there's relaxation?
Yeah, so very good point. I think that it's important for all of us to practice in different realms. So like practicing while focusing on alignment, practicing while focusing on characterization, practicing while focusing, and to blend those together. Some people say that you should just do it all together from the start, and that's wonderful. I think that as I've developed these skills separately, it's become easier to introduce it as I'm doing something new, a new song, a new plan, or whatever. But what I found, especially with the ladies, is my journey with them is kind of when I started paying more attention to this, is I would catch myself in the moment of performing being like, all right, I'm singing, I'm performing, right? I'm leaning. And then I would just tell myself, okay, just relax. Something else that helps with alignment, I'm sure that whoever is watching this has probably seen a variety of different options, but you can take your thumb and your pinky, put your pinky on your sternum and your thumb on your chin. And this will encourage, it probably feels pretty far back, but it'll keep your head from going forward. So if I'm singing like, tomorrow's another day, a lot of times people will take breaths, and like the air out here in front of me is more valuable than the air that's already here, right? Okay. So that's a helpful tool. Or you can take one of your hands, put it on your opposite shoulder, and then make an L with your hand, and you're resting this arm on this arm and putting your chin right here. So obviously it's going to be really hard to perform in this position, but it will help you. Tomorrow's another day. It makes it force. I don't like using the word force, but it allows you to feel what it's like when you are really aligned. Yeah. So to circle back and answer your question, I found myself in practice, I would just keep singing and do this, and I would just put it there. And eventually after so many times of putting that into practice, it's become more of a habit.
I know our members worry a lot about how do I do all that in choreography. So I love the idea of breaking it down, studying a specific skill.
The other fundamental thing I want to talk about in singing that's really helpful is breathing, actually. Because a lot of times in my voice lessons or anytime I'm coaching somewhere and we're talking about breathing, I feel like we get this idea in our heads that if we can't make it to the end of a phrase, we don't have enough air. Like, we got to get more, right? It must mean that I need more air, but it's probably not that you need more air. It's probably that you aren't singing as efficiently as you could. But two main things about breathing: we frequently get told that we need to take low breaths, right? And the other thing is quiet breaths. Taking a low breath encourages a relaxed and lowered larynx because of something called tracheal pull. So your larynx that we felt a little bit earlier sits on top of your trachea. Your trachea is your windpipe. It's a different pipe for food and air, right? So your trachea is sitting below your larynx and is connected to your lungs. When your lungs expand, your diaphragm contracts. So this is its normal sitting position. And then it contracts and moves all of your organs out of the way. So when we say take a low breath, it's not because you're getting air in your stomach. It's because all of your organs are moving out of the way to allow you to breathe. But because when the lungs expand and they're attached to your trachea, your trachea descends, and therefore your larynx descends. So if you put your hand here, and then you can put your other hand, put your thumb on your belly button, and then let your hand drop. And then I just want you to take a nice, relaxed, deep breath. And out. So we're really thinking about letting air go into this bottom hand. Breathe in again. And out. Good. So what you should have felt when that happened is that your larynx descended a little bit. Now, everything in here is very teeny, teeny, tiny, right? For women, our vocal cords are like smaller than a dime. So yeah, any amount of movement is like a big deal here. But typically when we sing higher, our larynx ascends. When we sing lower, our larynx descends a little bit. In general, we want it to be really relaxed. So that is the reason that taking a low breath is important, because tracheal pull helps and encourages healthy singing. The second thing about breathing is that it's important to take quiet breaths. And the reason for that is because when you hear, that means that my vocal cords didn't move out of the way fast enough. There was tension in them, and we can hear that tension. If I signal to my chorus, breathe up here, that's where they're going to breathe. They're going to have a clavicular breath where your clavicles are moving up and down. And if you put your hands down here, it's more likely that they'll take a diaphragmatic breath, right? So it takes some practice. It's really annoying, but if you could pay attention to that one thing for a good chunk of time, just focus on every time I take a breath to sing for the next 30 minutes. If it's not a open and relaxed and free and easy breath, then we're just going to do it again. And that's okay.
Well, the thing is, on Zoom, so everybody's muted at their chorus rehearsals, you have an opportunity to do something over. You are watching your director, and you are following along with rehearsal, but nobody can hear. So you could put yourself on notice. If you hear a loud breath alone in your room, you go ahead and start that phrase over or restate, now it would be almost easier to fix.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember in college in my conducting classes, just being told, like, relax, you got to relax, because whatever they see is what they're going to give back to you. So if they see tension here, they're going to give you a tense sound, because suddenly you've engaged all of these muscles around the vocal mechanism, right? So very good point.
Yeah. All right. So you had 2 exercises for us.
I do have 2 exercises for you, but before I go into specific exercises, I do want to say that I think it's important to sort of change the way we think about warm-ups. I think that warm-ups insinuates that, okay, we can go on autopilot. We're simply doing this to literally warm up the mechanism, but there's so much more you can do and get out of warm-up. So I call it vocal development. And I think it's the most important part of rehearsal. So also these 2 exercises that I'm about to tell you are on my YouTube channel. I made a YouTube channel just a couple of weeks ago to help out with a project for Sweet Adelines International. I was on a task force, and so all the directors are going to have access to those, but it's going to be really helpful for any singer, any individual singer. So you can go to New Voice Studio, just search that in the YouTube channel. I basically went through several books that I had from college, plus the Sing Baby Sing series that Darlene Rogers, Peggy Graham, and Dale Syverson have done. I used a few of those exercises as well. So there's lots of good content on there, but my two favorite.
Okay.
I always start with a bubble. If everybody was just to wake up and make your bed, bubble while you make your bed, bubble while you make your coffee, bubble while you're doing something, and you don't even have to do any specific exercise. Bubbling is amazing because in order to bubble, you have to relax all of these muscles, right? And we've already heard that for alignment and for breathing, it's all in an effort to alleviate tension around the vocal cords, because we don't want that tension to transfer into our itty bitty muscles, the vocal cords, right? So bubbling is amazing.
It doesn't matter what we bubble.
Yeah, I don't think it matters what you bubble in general, but my favorite exercise to start with is just sliding between 1 and 5 or do and so. So, and I think it's really important to get all of the notes in between. So often we're really accustomed to like these very specific notes in a scale, which are important, right? But in barbershop, especially in any a cappella genre of music, we aren't going to be singing exactly what's on the piano, right? We're using Pythagorean tuning and all of that fancy stuff. So I think it's important to explore what your voice feels like on all of those notes. I always start in like the middle of my range and use that particular exercise to go as high as I can. I can typically take myself or my students up to a high C using a bubble, because it is really hard for you to bubble with tension, right? So if you're producing a sound without tension, it's likely that you're going to be able to sing higher than you might if you were just singing on regular words and vowel sounds. My second favorite is to transfer that bubble to an E sound. So you can bubble. What?
I love E. Just go ahead.
I love E too. E is my favorite vowel. E is my favorite vowel because it encourages vocal fold closure. So I'm doing this because it's like vocal folds apart, vocal folds together. An E vowel encourages them to come together. So back to the breathing thing, when most people say, I'm not able to make it through phrases, it's not because they don't have enough air, it's because there's air leaking through their vocal cords. So if you hear an airy timbre of like, ah, that's a lot of air, I'm going to be out very fast. But if I sing it on E, it'll encourage them to come together and not allow air to escape as easily. So one thing I like to do when I'm bubbling in general is to bubble with an E tongue position on the inside. So if I bubble without thinking about any vowel, it would sound like this. And if I think E, it makes a big difference. Right. So if that's hard for you guys at home watching, I would encourage you to alternate between E, ah, or E, so singing like E, and then pay attention to what your tongue's doing. This will be my tongue. E, when you sing E, the blades of your tongue come up and should be touching your top back molars. The tip of your tongue is like right behind your front teeth. When you sing or ah, your tongue is just resting. So then after singing E, I would try bubbling on that one note to alternate so you can really feel it. Yeah. Yes. And then the last step is to just implement E in your bubble at all times, because again, it's just a good habit to have to encourage that vocal fold closure of. So the second exercise is really just starting on a bubble and opening to E. I start on 5 and then walk it down the scale or so, and then walk it down to do. And all you should have to do is open your lips because you've already put your tongue in that E position. Just walk it down.
That's cool. So you're making the E inside first. Ah,
Yes. So that you can transfer that freedom and ease that you should have from bubbling because you had to alleviate any tension, right? To a vowel. I always start with bubbling and then I transfer the bubbling to an E and then I work on a few other vowels, then an exercise that has multiple vowels, and then probably a tag. When I was in person with my chorus, we would always end vocal development with a tag because that helps you implement those skills in a more bite-sized manner than maybe your general music.
right. Wow, this was fantastic. So everybody check out Kim's YouTube channel, New Voice Studio. The link went across your screen, so check it out. Thank you so much for giving us tips today and sharing your time with us. It was so much fun getting to hear about your background and also to take your advice on keeping our voices healthy.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. I think it's a wonderful resource for everyone to just get to hear and chat about lots of different things.
Yeah, well, we look forward to being able to do it in person.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Renee.